Okay, so that works.
Hello, is this the place?
This is the place. Yes.
Hello, I love the tie. Let me get my video mojo going here. Hold on. Nope, that's not it. And that would be, there we go.
Push the button, Frank.
I should show up somewhere in there.
Excuse me.
We've got a great picture of you.
You, oh, you should have my video though. Wait, let's try that. There we
There
go.
we are.
Hey. Very good.
I
Hey,
love
you're
what
the
you've
guy
done
from
with
the
your
Big Bang
neckwear.
Theory.
What's that?
I said, you're the guy from the Big Bang Theory.
I'm from other things too, but I'll take it.
But you're the one who put Sheldon Cooper in his place, and that was
I had somebody's got to do it. Somebody. So thanks for your interest, guys.
oh, thank
Thank you for
you.
doing this.
This is our Chief Meteorologist Austen Onek, and so he's going to be the one speaking with you today.
The meteorologist is always the science guy in every set. You notice that?
Well, and this goes back a long. Well, first of all, thanks for noticing the tie. My mom made this, and I was hoping this was going to be an in-person interview so you could autograph it.
Oh,
Excuse me, but
well,
that's
just bring it to my talk. I'd be happy to scribble on it.
if I could, I would, but we have a bit of a personnel issue at this time. I'm not going to be able to get there and do my show here at the station.
So you give it to someone else who brings it. There's solutions to this.
Yeah, logistics, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So
Mhm.
unfortunately, that's about as good as we can do for now. So, well, thank you very much. I know you're quite busy for everything, and we have limited amount of time, so we'll go ahead and kick things into gear. I just wanted to say, first of all, just as a personal note, and this is not really part of the interview, but I've just always been curious. I was watching Cosmos back in sixth grade and had a great impact on me on science and learning and being able to express science communication. What was it like to work with both Professor Sagan and with Andrew on your version of Cosmos, two of the most incredible people I understand when it comes to science communication? What was it like to just interview with them and work with them? I've just always been curious about that.
So the my relationship with Carl Sagan, as captured by the press and in people's imagination, is vastly overstated.
Hmm.
I was in his presence probably no more than four, possibly five times in my life. And so the notion that he was a mentor is not accurate in the traditional way people use the word mentor.
Mhm.
I would, I'm still happy with that reference, but I have to modify how the word is used to say there's some people who can be a mentor by example. And if that example is visible and you resonate with it, then that person is basically a mentor. So I learned a lot with regard to the patience it requires to teach people who might otherwise be sort of recalcitrant in their ideas, how to explore metaphor, how to look for examples that people will more likely accept and resonate with than other examples that you might have been taught. So it invited me to be more creative about how I teach, and that influence is forever. Now, Ann Druyan, who I did work with directly, upon working with her, it became clear. I don't know that either of them would admit this, but it became clear to me that the heart that was in Sagan's writings came, if not entirely from, certainly mostly from Ann Druyan. She, though not a scientist herself, she feels the science and she feels civilization and humanity. And when you combine those two, the science and then the what it is to feel the science, then you get the DNA of a cosmos. And that's why none of us think of Cosmos as a documentary, right? It is that, but that's not the taste it leaves in your mouth. We need another word to describe it because of how it influences the viewer. Because it's not just simply informational, as a typical documentary would be. It's also affects you emotionally. and it compels you to think and feel differently about the world. So this is an entire way of approaching the science and of approaching my role as educator in this world that was influenced by that collaboration.
Going back, you used the word recalcitrant just a minute ago, and one of my favorite
I
quotes
think I
from
used the word correctly.
yeah,
That might be the third time the words ever come out of my mouth.
yeah, well, it's like Jarvis on Iron Man. At some point in time, you say the wrong strawberry, so you just have to get used to, making a mistake like that. But one of my favorite quotes from you is the events in the cosmos can be traceable directly to the molecules in our own body. This makes me want to go out and shake people and say, "Have you heard this?" Going the opposite direction on that. And when it comes to, I'm big into science education. I give weather talks, I give to schools, to church groups, and whomever. Going in that opposite direction for just a minute, what in say the last 5 years has made you want to go out into the streets and shake people and say, "How could you believe this? The moon is made of green cheese. The earth is flat." Anything like that.
Yeah, so I've that quote of mine that you captured correctly probably goes back 20 years, and no longer do I feel compelled to shake people because if you need to resort to that, it
Mm.
means all your other tactics had failed. And so since then, I have put myself on a higher. I have higher expectations for myself, so that I would never resort to having to sort of shake. How could you possibly think Earth is flat? So it means I need a better way to convince them. And the patience exhibited by Carl, my father also, uh, he was a sociologist,
Mm.
and neither of my parents were scientists, so I'm their science kid.
Mm.
But one thing that he he lived through and was a participant in the civil rights movement back in the 50s and 60s, and he was active in New York City government at the time. And one thing that's not written, because people don't write stories about things that didn't happen. But if you looked in the 1960s, 67, especially 1968, most of the major cities in the country had riots in the inner cities, certainly after Martin Luther King was assassinated, but other sort of powder keg moments. While New York City had occasional bouts of unrest, there was no major rioting. Nothing like what you saw in Watts, in Los Angeles, or some other sort of infamous outbreaks of um, protest turning violent. Did not happen in New York. There's no story. Why didn't New York, the largest ghetto in the country, why didn't they have riots? My father was active in programs to give people hope. Because what is a riot if not the last act of desperation when you're certain there's no hope left for you, your cause, or even perhaps your life? And so my father's mantra coming out of that was it's not good enough to be right. You also have to be effective. Because you can be right. You can say, oh, the earth is round and you're wrong. Get out of here. You're right. But are you effective? No, no. And you can walk around in your self-righteousness, but realizing that if you also have to be effective, you can't walk around and be self-righteous. You have to extend the olive branch. You have to, not compromising what is true, but just be inventive about how to communicate what is true to those who think something that's objectively false. And so these are forces operating on me daily. So no, I don't shake people by the lapel anymore.
Because in a similar fashion, my dad was an architect. My mom is still a practicing occupational therapist back in Topeka, Kansas. So I was the scientific geek, nerd, dork, whatever, from that area. But
All the above, yeah.
yeah, and they encouraged me and things like that. But it would always confuse people. It's like, oh, your dad's an architect. You're going to be an architect, right? No, I'm going to be a meteorologist. You what?
Right.
Excuse me. And just an aside here, one of your interviews on StarTalk not too long ago with Lawrence Fishburne, that was one of my favorites right there. And I have to say, I could listen to him read the Federal Register. And you were talking about The Matrix being one of your favorite movies. And that part right there, I would love to turn that into an audio file of him saying, "I don't know if you're ready to know that, Neil." Uh, that's you've got some incredible both scientific and otherwise talents on Star Talk. Is there any type of thing in the works, new people coming on that you could give us a quick tease about for Star Talk purposes?
Yeah, so thanks for asking that, and thanks for being a fan at whatever level you are. We the Star Talk has, I hesitate to call it a recipe, even though if that's really what it is. I have a professional, typically, not with the Fishborn interview. If I have a separate sort of relationship with the guest, typically we do a one-on-one, and I did that with Lawrence Fishburne. I did it with Terry Crews, the actor, uh, where he's an actor and his body is also an actor, right? Terry Crews, he's fully muscled, and that's also usually part of whatever he is in whatever he's doing. But one-on-ones are very rare. More typically, I have a comedian co-host and then an expert guest,
Mhm.
and the comedian offers a force of levity, and the expert guest offers a force of gravity. And I, as host, I have the knobs that moderate those two, so that they always come in at uh, a welcoming ratio to each other, so that you, the listener or the viewer, will be simultaneously enlightened and entertained, and you'll come away smiling and possibly even laughing. That's the recipe, and we found that people come back for more.
Mhm.
If you enjoyed learning something, whatever that situation setup was, you're gonna come back to it. And so my task is, no matter who the guest is, that I achieve this balance of information and humor. And so we used to, little known fact, the fact that it's called Star Talk was originally inspired by the idea that we would invite celebrity onto the show, talk about some projects they had, and then explore how science has touched their lives in those projects. I don't expect a celebrity to have the scientific expertise, but they would have the drawing power. And then I'd bring in an expert to talk about that aspect. So let's say somebody did a movie, if it's an actor, they did a movie on the brain, going into the mind or whatever. I'd bring on a neuroscientist and
Mhm.
talk about how is that possible in the future or not, that sort of thing. What we learned is that our audience was less impressed with celebrity than they were with content itself. And so we stopped chasing celebrity. So
Mhm.
the early shows, everyone was, A-lister, worst case B plus lister, if there's such a thing. Now we give no regard to what list they're on at all, and we make the content what it is you embrace and come back for. So in the old days, it was come for the celebrity, stay for the science. Now it's come for the science, stay for the science,
I've,
with a
I've I've found
snap
that
along the way.
I've tried to adapt that over my career, and I've been a meteorologist for about 34 years. And when you invite the audience along, instead of lecturing to them or just throwing regurgitating facts with them, you're going to be able to get some, especially in a weathercast, being able to get somebody to find out more about what's going on by explaining it to them. That has a more open structure to help out on that. And I have to say that I've borrowed some of your talks before that I've seen on YouTube, especially about the elevator panel and missing the number 13.
Oh,
I,
God, you got some deep memories there. Whoa.
I watch Cosmos, the original series, so often. I've got parts of it memorized. It's just that's what goes into everything that I am about science. And I've taken that and I've used that as part of explaining to the kids what's going on with people today about the number 13 and pseudoscience and all sorts of things like that. Well, I was at a local school about 2 months ago, and I gave that presentation as part of the lead in to say, here's why science, here's why math, here's why technology is important. And I asked them, okay, look at the graphic. Now let's count upward after I asked them, what's missing from this? And they figured it out. And then we counted up numerically. And I had to explain to them, you're not missing the 13th floor. You're on the 13th floor. You're just calling it the 14th floor. And a teacher sitting in the auditorium very close to me let out this audible gasp and said, "You're right. All this time I had no idea." And like, okay, right there, that's why we do this. And it goes out and talk to people about these mysterious bouts of pseudoscience that creep their way into everything. That's what I think is important on there. And I'm very thankful that you and Dr. Sagan and Bill Nye and all sorts of other people are doing this. Now, with that being said, and we're running out of time here, and I know you've got other interviews to do, I'd just like to close out with just the idea of things are looking kind of grim these days when it comes to looking forward with science. There's a lot of scientific agencies under attack. Pseudoscience seems to be on the rise around the world. And you've talked about how the problem is the adults who vote, not the kids. The kids can be inspired, the kids can learn, you can present more information to the kids. What information, what nugget of possible inspiration would you just be able to give to either kids or adults to be able to say, this is important, here's what you can do to help out going forward?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm a little more cynical than the answer you might be hoping to get from me there.
Hope
Yeah, so
springs eternal.
so I don't have a silver bullet
Hmm.
for this. What I do know and what I know historically works is if someone believes things that are objectively false and they're resistant to having their views changed. By the way, there's always a spectrum of people. Some are on the fence and you can convince them. But deep in across the lines, I'm not entirely sure they can be convinced until the consequences of their belief system affect their health, their wealth, or their security. And then they wake up and say, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was lied to. Maybe the scientists were right. And like I say, this has been said before, but it bears repeating. Almost every disaster movie begins by people in charge ignoring the warnings of scientists. Just think about that. And so it may be that we have to sink lower with catastrophic consequences for people to wake up. Because if it has no consequences to people, there's no reason for them to stop believing that which is not true. And so, sure, if you want to think we've never been to the moon, you can still hold down a job if that's the case. Not for NASA, but there are plenty of jobs for you if you think we've never been to the moon or you think Earth is flat. But if you are certain vaccines will kill more people than the disease, and then you refuse to get vaccinated for yourself and your family, that has consequences. And in some cases, lethal consequences. And so it would be unfortunate, particularly if it impacts loved ones who you influenced, that you would have to have, like I said, consequences to your health, your wealth, or your security for having ignored what scientists tell you. But if it hits lower, then there could be a rebound, and that would be a more potent rebound than anything any educator could tell that community.
My wife is actually, she's a science teacher now. Well, now she's a math teacher at a local school, and she went to get a flu shot a few years ago. We just moved here from Memphis, and her nurse at the doctor's office said, "You really don't want to get this vaccine because you don't know what's in it." And
The
we had
nurse said that.
Yes, and she had to go tell our doctor, "Do you know your nurse is saying these things and is that's a little bit worrisome?" So we made certain that they knew about that. So we've experienced that personally in many different formats right there. Is there anything else you guys want to have asked real quick before we let him go, or is pretty much everything? Our producer, Christine.
Hi, Christine.
You for doing this, and also I'm so glad I get to listen in on you because you were supposed to visit my school back in I don't know sometime in the 2010s.
What?
It was in late 2010s. I think it was like 2018 or
I was
something.
supposed to visit school, and then what happened?
I think it got canceled because either scheduling or weather. I think it was weather. So
Well,
I'm
you
glad I
still
at least
turned
got
out
to
okay,
listen
though, it
in.
looks like.
I'm sorry?
You still turned out okay, it looks
I
like.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still missed it though.
And she
Oh,
doesn't hold
okay.
it
Sorry
against
about
you.
I
that.
don't.
All right. I know you got other things to do. You've been very gracious on this. It's such an honor to be able to talk with you for a little bit. And if you're ever passing through, I would love to be able to sit down with you for a half an hour and just chew the fat over lunch or something. So,
Compare notes,
y-
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you very much. I'm going to tell my mom that you love the tie.
I totally spotted it instantly. Yes. Yeah. Does
Okay.
that tie have Pluto on it?
It's got most of the solar system on here, I
Because I
think.
can come with a Sharpie and blot it out if you have to.
I can just write dwarf on there, and it will
Yeah. Okay. If you
all
want to
the
protect its
so what
existence, sure.
it's part of the solar system, and actually that was one of the questions I got asked at my last school that I went to. Do you consider Pluto to still be a planet? It's like, well, Dr. Tyson, I have to check with him, but technically yes, but no. So,
So why isn't it a planet anymore?
Oh, um, you have to come to the talk.
Okay, fair.
sir,
I
thank
slipped in a
you.
couple of slides just because there's the Pluto lovers still lurk among us,
Yeah.
and
The
I put in
Sheldon Coopers out there.
a couple of slides just to sort of put set the record straight. But there are very good reasons for that demotion.
Mhm.
And once you hear them, you say, okay, I didn't. At the top of the list, let me just say, do you realize that our moon, Earth's moon, has 5 times the mass of Pluto?
Interesting. I did not.
Of course you didn't, because you're a Pluto lover, and they don't tell you that.
I'm well aware of that fact, but I still like to call Pluto a planet.
No, there are other reasons too, but that one kind of leads the list.
Yeah.
But there's more.
All right, sir, thank you very much. You've been very kind. Look forward to your talk coming here, and hopefully we bump into each other again down the road in person at some point.
All right, you got it. Thanks for your interest again. And
Thank you, sir.
everybody
Thank you,
behind
friend.
the scenes. Okay,
Thank
bye.
you.